Hi, I'm Kat, one of the test experts at Magoosh, and the UC system just announced that for students seeking admissions in fall 2021, the ACT and SAT will be optional. This is in response to COVID-19. As many of you know, that ACT, SAT were canceled for the rest of the spring. And it's a pretty big deal because the UC system across its 9 undergrad campuses admits approximately, well, over 100,000 students each year. So this is a big chunk of students. And even for people who aren't applying for a UC school, it's raised questions about the future of UC test requirements and also questions about what this means for the rest of the schools in the nation. Are other schools going to follow suit? And students who do plan on applying are asking things such as, if I already took my test, should I submit my scores? If I haven't taken the test, should I take it anyway, even if I'm only maybe applying to UC schools and schools that don't require those tests? So those are the questions I'm going to answer in this short video. To answer the first one, these changes only apply for people who are going to be enrolling in this upcoming cycle. So people who will be hopefully first-year students in 2021. And there's no word about this extending beyond 2021. Officials are saying they'll reevaluate the situation as time goes on. It could, however, create a cascade of other schools adopting the same policy. And up until a week ago, only a handful of schools had said that they were going to waive the test requirements. So now the California state system is reevaluating. Other major universities probably will as well. But for the vast majority of schools who do adopt this policy, only expect it to apply to this upcoming admissions cycle. And I've linked some sources below so you can check up on individual schools and see if the schools you're applying for are changing their admissions policies in any way, because there are other changes that schools have announced, such as allowing more pass, no pass grading options and allowing transcripts to the deadline for that to be extended. So definitely make sure that you look up each school individually and don't assume anything unless and until a school posts changes to their policies. Second, if you already took the test or one or both of them, it is best to submit your scores unless your scores were pretty low, and especially if there was a very large discrepancy between your GPA and your scores, having a very high GPA and very low test scores, those students might be better off not submitting. However, what I will say is that the UC schools actually are able to look up and see if you took the tests. They probably won't do that. I don't think they will, because it's not in the spirit of this decision they made, and they really made this decision in order to relieve stress on students and to try and be more fair to students who might not even be able to take a test in time for early admissions. So that would be some international students, maybe students living in rural areas. I don't think they're going to go and look and see whether or not you took the test. And they cannot see your scores unless you submit them. But do know that they are able to do that if they choose. So going back to the point of having a very high GPA and lower test scores, by this I don't mean low for you or below your expectations. I mean, for instance, maybe somebody who's in the top 10% of GPA and in the bottom 20% for test scores. And the way to look this up is to, again, I'm speaking to students who already took the test. go ahead and look at your percentile, look at your combined percentile. If that's not available, you can average the different exam sections. And if you're in the bottom 20th percentile, but you have a 3.9 or above, those students, I think, might be better off not submitting. That's only a small fraction of students. And even still, I think that because the schools are making the scores optional, they're not going to be quite as tough about low scores as they otherwise would be. If anything, schools see students who submit scores voluntarily as taking initiative, being organized, being confident in your abilities. So if you're in doubt, I recommend going ahead and submitting. Remember that test scores are just one component of your overall application. And one thing I try and drive in over and over again, because most students really get hung up on grades and test scores and activities, is that the essays count for a lot more than you realize. So beef up your application essays. That's a really, really good use of time. Also, the difficulty of the classes you take factors in quite a bit. Schools would rather see somebody who has a few Bs but took very challenging courses than somebody with a straight A average who didn't push themselves, who didn't extend beyond the bare minimum requirements. And third, should students who haven't taken the test still take it? Well, you probably won't be surprised that my answer here is yes. Other than extenuating circumstances, obviously if you're unable to take the exams, this is definitely something for you to talk over with your parents if you think you don't want to take them. But my advice is to take them. Remember, you don't have to submit the scores. A lot of times students don't realize that when they're first registering and even when they're in the test room filling out the paperwork, there are options to send your test scores to schools, and you don't need to do that then. You can wait. You can wait till your test scores come back and then choose whether or not to send them. Remember, the whole point of this loosened policy is to reduce stress. And I like to remind students that you don't need the stress of submitting your test scores before you even know what those test scores will be. Another reason to submit scores or take the test if you haven't taken it is because if you score high enough in the verbal sections, basically, so that would be the English section on the ACT and the composite writing reading section of the SAT, you can test out of your initial writing requirements. That is a UC-wide writing requirement. I believe it's called Writing 1 or something equivalent. And another way to do that is if you are taking AP English and score above a 3, either on the regular English or the literature, that also waives that requirement. There are also scholarships that often require test scores. Another thing that was relevant in my own life was I wound up transferring after my first year. And I had no idea I was going to do that. That wasn't part of my plan. I did it for location reasons. But I had to submit my test scores when I transferred, going into my sophomore year. And so that would have been kind of a pain to deal with at the end of my freshman year of college to retake those tests. But luckily I'd already taken them. So there are many considerations and I believe many different reasons it is best to take the test. Now, all of that said, this is a really stressful time for just about everybody. You don't have to take the test at this very minute. And I know a lot of you want to get your applications in early. There are early admissions decisions that begin, I think the very first schools, they begin the very end of September. You might be surprised by how different you feel come August, September, even October. So take a deep breath. You might need a break. Definitely look at your own application timeline, talk it over with your family, maybe with guidance counselors, but you might feel very different in a month or two. Motivation might be back, focus might be back, so you don't have to decide right now, or at least most of you don't. And for those of you that do feel focused, motivated right now, or maybe just kind of want to ease in lightly, I did link some free resources to this video. So you can kind of get your feet wet. If you've taken a break from studying, or if you're just starting, you might choose to follow a study schedule, look at flashcards. I do hope that you're well, or as well as can be right now, given your own circumstances. And I wish you all the luck in this upcoming admission cycle.